Hi, I'm Rhonda Smeisterla, and I'm going to be discussing with you standardized testing. In Florida alone, between $38 and $44 million was spent last year in school-age standardized testing. Are the results from these types of tests worth our children's time and our tax dollars? Bob Peterson and Monty Neal state, there's only one thing worse than requiring students to reduce all learning to a single correct answer, and that is reducing assessment and accountability to a single standardized test. Today I will be attempting to convince you that standardized testing is not advantageous in the education of our children. First, let's begin by discussing what standardized testing is and the flaws associated with it. According to Mike Smith, a standardized test is a test given under specific uniform conditions. This means no matter where the test is given, whether it's a private school in Nebraska, a public school in California, or a home school in Texas, every child has precisely the same amount of time to work through each section of the test. What this doesn't account for is there isn't a national standardized test. Each state has their own testing. Therefore, the results cannot be compared nationally. In addition, most tests target superficial thinking. In other words, short-term memory. Students learn the information long enough to be tested on it, and then the information is dumped. Also, the results from standardized testing is intended to show what schools are high risk and what students are at risk. This merely reinforces information already known. Most school districts know what schools are at risk. They know what students are at risk. Now let's take a look at the expenses associated with standardized testing. As I pointed out in my introduction, standardized testing is expensive. It's big business to many corporations. In 2006, the federal government spent an estimated $408 million in standardized testing. These costs include developing, administering, scoring, and reporting the results. Now to these costs, add the full-time wages of an employee to prepare and administer these tests. Then add the cost of security associated with these tests. For example, most states even provide the number 2 pencils as a security measure. All this money has to come from somewhere. It's usually pulled away from books, from training, and from supplies. Furthermore, schools receive bonuses if they perform well. As a result, teachers are motivated to teach strictly what's on the test. Thus, our students' education suffer from this narrowing of learning. Now let's examine how much emphasis is placed on standardized testing. Due to standardized testing, our students have more pressure than ever. At times, these pressures are so great that these psychological pressures are so great that students have even had to be hospitalized for them. Imagine how we feel when we're about to take an exam. Now, imagine that you're a child and you know whether or not you pass or fail that grade is dependent on how well you perform on this test. Most states won't even let students graduate if they do not perform well enough on their test. This practice continues even though research shows that retaining a child does not benefit the child, that rarely does the child improve on their performance the next year. According to S.E. Smith, standardized tests do not measure critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, and other similar important aspects of intelligence. Emphasis of scoring well doesn't only fall on the student's shoulders. As I mentioned, schools get bonuses if they perform well. They also receive funding for their scoring. So administrators are encouraged to perform better. Therefore, their focus is on the testing and not on our children and their education. In conclusion, I have shown that with standardized testing, learning is superficial, that it's expensive, and that too much emphasis is placed on test performance. I believe that the education of our children should be left to the teachers that know them best. If a teacher feels a child is falling behind in a certain area, there should be programs set up to place that child in to help them advance. I do not believe that standardized testing is the answer to children being left behind. Thank you for your attention.